Working night shifts can be creepy, but imagine driving alone at night only to wind up on a quiet road with a passenger awaiting for your arrival. Here's a story told by a taxi driver who picked up a passenger he will never forget. This is Storytime. A taxi driver whose name was preferred to remain anonymous decided to work late one night, looking to earn some extra income. He headed to his taxi car and started driving on the streets, searching for passengers. Before I continue, there's some info about the revolution of taxis in Malaysia that I think you should know. Before big taxi companies like Grab was introduced in Malaysia, taxi drivers in Malaysia were just normal people who would work on their own, endlessly searching for passengers while tending to provide unreasonably high prices that vary from driver to driver. Thus, Grab was introduced, with modern taxis having high-end GPS trackers on their phones and higher safety measures taken with these drivers with fixed prices. The old taxis only had meters that calculated the distance when turned on and charged their passengers accordingly. It was normal for taxi drivers to drive around for hours as what they call hotspots, where they may have a better chance of obtaining a customer. It's also rather normal for these drivers to stop close to pedestrians on the streets, asking if they needed a ride, which can be really creepy at times. This story existed at a time when modern taxis like Grab weren't yet introduced. So before I release any spoilers, let's get back to the story. The time was just approaching midnight when a taxi driver drove through the quiet streets. He was about to reach a traffic light junction when he saw a woman standing just before the junction, staring at him. Curious and brave enough to ask the lady if she needed a ride, as do most taxis do at that time. The driver approached the lady and stopped his car just in front of her, asking if she needed a ride. Oddly, the woman gave no response and just simply entered the car. The second she stepped foot in the car, the driver noticed a strong smell of jasmine flowers. The taxi driver then asked the lady where she would like to go. Again, no response. However, this time, she handed him a piece of paper. The taxi driver took the paper, and on it was a number and the name of the road. The taxi driver did not know where this address was and asked the lady if she could direct him. Once more, she spoke with no words and silently nodded her head as he looked at her through his rear mirror. So as the driver continuously drove, he kept asking her if he was heading towards the right direction. But again, the only response she gave was a nod if he was on the right track, which was really strange for the driver. After driving for some time, the scenery around him had suddenly changed. From a city center, they ended up on a narrow road with only trees surrounding them, both left and right, just enough for one car to pass. As they kept driving, a mist had appeared on the road, which made it become somewhat harder to see. Trying to understand his surroundings, he kept looking out of his window, trying to figure out where they were. As the mist cleared up, he knew he wasn't in a village. He was surrounded by gravestones, both on his left and on his right. The hair on the back of his neck prickled, and he dared not look in his rear mirror. He started sweating nervously and had chills go down his spine. He continuously asked the lady if this is the right place, but again, no sound came from the back seat. Desperately searching for a house that he hoped would appear, the lady suddenly tapped him on his shoulder. Without hesitance, he stopped the car, refusing to turn around and look at the lady. He heard the lady rustle with money and felt her handing the money over. He grabbed the money with his shaking hands and placed them in the glove compartment. She opened the door and left without ever saying a single word. Once the door was closed, the driver drove off as fast as he could without ever looking behind. However, the story doesn't just end there. The next day, the driver felt curious to know why the lady wanted to head to the graveyard and decided to go there during the day. To his findings, as he approached the place he had dropped her off, he saw a freshly buried grave with a picture of the same woman of which was placed next to the grave. He had intense chills that ran down his neck and spine, and the place immediately freaked him out. He headed back to his car, and before leaving, he had the urge to check his glove compartment, whether what he went through the night before was real or just a dream. But what he found is something he will never forget. Once he opened the glove compartment, all he saw was Chinese hell notes. He threw it out of his window and never returned to the place. After some time, he later found out through some news reports in the area that a woman had died at that very junction just days before he picked her up. It so happened that this very lady had died in a hit-and-run car accident, which happened around midnight at the same time he saw her. But the sad part of this story is that the hit-and-run driver was never found. That's the end of this story. Since you've made it this far, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram at Defies. My name is Irfan, and this concludes another Storytime episode. This is Defies. Thanks for watching.